Hey, friends, welcome back to the Called to Lead podcast. So, I'm excited to dive into a series that I'm calling Peace in the Pivot by introducing you to someone who has an incredible story within her over a decade of being in the business of network marketing. But for those of you like me who might have just had devastating news of the company that you've been a part of changing the structure business model, well, Whitney Ray has been through that recently and she's going to be sharing her story, her journey in faith and in business with us today. And so I know it's going to be such a blessing to anybody that's listening, but especially to those of you who might be navigating those difficult decisions and want some steps and ways to make sure that your plans align with the Lord's plans. So let's get into it. Whitney, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so excited because I met you through a mutual friend and leader with St. Colleen Matthews. And she shared a little bit of your story and journey with me. And I was like, okay, I got to meet her first of all, because you sound amazing. So we became insta friends, but I don't know much about your background. I can tell you're a believer. I can tell you were bold in sharing your faith throughout your business journey. But for those who maybe like me don't know you very well, let's kind of start at the beginning. Tell us who you are, where you're from, give us the backstory.
Awesome. Yeah, I am Whitney Ray, and I've lived in Houston the past 18 years, but the last year we have moved to a small town in between Houston and Austin. So, me and my family, we've got three boys aged 15, 13, and 10, and my college sweetheart. We just celebrated our 19th anniversary. We are out here learning what it's like to be in a small town and really, really enjoying it, but kind of have had a pivot in our whole life with that move. I began working in what I would call direct sales in 2011. I had a 6 week old. My second baby was 6 weeks old, and I had a little 2 year old. And I found Noonday Collection. And it was a company that was all about empowering artisans around the world to get their goods out to the world. And I did not think I was a salesperson at all. I just loved fashion. I really loved missions. Our family was very focused on that. And we found ourselves living in Houston, my husband working as an engineer. We thought we would be living around the world, being on mission for the Lord. And he had called us to be on mission in Houston. And so I was kind of balancing what that looked like. And then when Noonday came along, I thought this is a cool way for me to marry this artistic, designing, beauty side of me with helping others. And so I partnered with them for a little over 5 years, had a wonderful time. And along that way, I realized that sales was simply enthusiasm and telling other people about what I loved and why they were going to love it too. And I just enjoyed that process so, so much. And then a door opened up with Beauty Counter for me to partner with them in 2016. I began to partner with Beauty Counter and was able to quickly succeed there and ended up being one of the top 10 earners at Beauty Counter and absolutely loved it. Wholehearted. I was all in. My whole heart behind it was if I could do it, someone else could do it too. If I started as a mom of little toddlers who wasn't good on social media, I mean, the first Facebook video I did, my hand was shaking. I just, all my friends were stay-at-home moms. Like I did not have this vast network or even what I thought was a great skill set, but I just decided to learn every step of the way because it was meaningful to me. And I thought I had a meaningful mission and a purpose to share with other people. And so it was great. I loved it. And then in April of this year, we got word that Greg Renfrew, who had founded Beauty Counter, was buying back the company. And we were so excited about it. They were going to take a 10-day pause. And that 10-day pause has now extended into hopefully a relaunch of the company in a brand new form in 2025. We're still waiting on those details, but I went from leading a huge team and being so happy and excited to be there to having no way to place orders within 24 hours. And so at that point, I had to make some shifts and some pivots, and that's where you find me today.
My gosh. Wow. I mean, we were sharing about this before we hit record, and I don't think I had realized how drastic or dramatic that situation for Beauty Counter reps was. And that at least was saying, and I believe in RNF, we at least have the option of continuing with that affiliate side. But I mean, I cannot imagine that being taken from you. And I know right now you're sitting, for those watching on YouTube, you're sitting in this beautiful studio that you invested in for your Beauty Counter business. And now, of course, you're you're pivoting into that. And we can talk about that in a minute. But I want to share a really funny fact that I don't think I've ever shared on this podcast. And Colleen's going to kill me for sharing this, but I actually signed up as a Noonday consultant back in the day. believe it or not, for a hot minute. So I also had a heart for missions and was fundraising to go on my first mission trip. That's another story for another day. But I joined Noonday with the idea of making that little bit of extra money to put back towards mission. And so I've always been a big fan, and we don't necessarily have to talk about that that transition, but I love that connection of getting into this business, for a heart, for like you said, sharing what you loved, whether that's jewelry or clothes or beauty or skincare. When you love something and you're passionate about it, like we were chatting before we hit record, it's just about sharing your enthusiasm and adopting simple systems and, making it like you said, so the everyday person can do it too. So I love hearing your journey and over a decade, like 13 years in the business to have it culminate in like a crazy way in April. Walk us through what that looked like and felt like. I mean, it had to have been horrible, but were you fearful? Like what kind of emotions and what did that look like in terms of even
Oh gosh.
what to do next?
Yeah, well, it happened on a Monday when we got the final news that, I'd gotten the news that it was closed for 10 days and then it was pushed out. We were going to have another call and it needed to happen a few days later. So Monday is when the call happened and my husband was in Canada for work. And that's an important piece because I went through the next couple of days, just me and the kids. And I ended up by the end of the week, I lost 7 pounds.
Oh my
And that has never happened before, unless I've been like severely ill. And really what it was I would say that's an indicator of where I was at. I just kind of went into survival mode. I was, just so focused on my clients, every person on my team. What was I going to do next? The grief, like, how could this happen to me? There's these thoughts that go through our mind. And I had to do a lot of work and healing to get through them. And you get put in a very like fearful place immediately when you think something's going to be there and then all of a sudden it's gone. And that's never a great place to be. And I knew I didn't want to stay there. So it was a lot of like fighting to say, don't live in fear. God loves you. Like he is with you. He was for you. But sometimes in those moments, especially those first hours or first days, my husband being in Canada and it's just like me, me and my thoughts, there was a lot of work that had to be done in those times. And but there were moments where I could see God showing up in like really radical ways and I held on to that. And so I think sometimes if you've ever been in a really hard situation, whether it's your job gets taken away suddenly or there's a car accident or a sudden diagnosis, I've been in places like that before too. And that was good for me to go back and remember and be thankful. Okay, God, I've walked with you long enough now that when I was sitting in that hospital with my son and that happened, I knew you were with me and you're going to be with me now, even though my emotions and my feelings are telling me, you know, it's all ending. It's never going to be good again. I know that's not true. I know you're there. And so there were just these tiny little moments that he showed up when Greg made the announcement that they were going to have to pause. And at that point, the news was that it was going to reopen in the fall. She said, I want there to be a soft landing for you. And we're doing a call with Arbonne. And I will tell you, I had never been to their website. The only memory I had of the company was my mom in college. When I was in college, she had these orange bottles in the bathroom for a brief period of time. I knew nothing about it. And I was like, Arbonne. And I was like, I don't even know. So I got on the website that night because I couldn't sleep. I knew the call was the next day. And I opened it up and I was like, oh, I mean, literally that was my attitude. I was like, oh, because I loved Beauty Counter. I loved everything about it. I wasn't looking for another company. And I audibly almost heard, it was in my head, but I almost heard this like audible voice that said, Whitney, this is what I want you to do. And there's been very few times I have felt that in the past. And there's been a few times he said it and I've ignored it and been like, oh, that's just this fear I have. And it has not gone well for me. And so just knowing, God, when I've heard you say these kind of whispers before, maybe this isn't forever for me. Maybe you are saying yes to this for the next week. Maybe it's the next month. I don't have to believe this is the next 8 years of my life, but I believe that you want me to look at this and I have the slightest bit of openness to you. I'll take one more step. And I think that was how I got through those first couple of days and weeks. Honestly, maybe first month is I didn't have an assurance that this was the best thing ever for me or that this was going to, I didn't have even half the answers I have today, but I just believed I was going to take one more step forward. I knew he had said, he wanted me to look at this and he would tell me whether this was for me or not if I kept having an openness to him. And that has been the story over and over that whole month, that next month of my openness and getting on calls or meeting with people. I even interviewed uplines, which, okay, you've been a leader. So of course we're going to interview our uplines because here's my pridefulness when I'm looking back now. I'm such a great leader. I've done this for so long, so I need to make sure they're good enough for me. I mean, I've been really revealed a lot of pride. So I got on these calls. First call was awesome, loved her. Second call wasn't for me. There was a third person I was supposed to get on the phone with, but I was like, I'm so tired. I don't even want to get on another call. And I get a text from a dear friend of mine in Beauty Counter, and she's like, "Hey, I've joined Arbonne. She had joined underneath this third person I was supposed to call." And I was like, "Oh gosh, I haven't even called her." Hop on the call for maybe 5 seconds. Didn't interview her at all. Just said, I was like, "God wants me to join with this friend. I need to just stick with her. I trust my friend deeply. I'm just going to join." Knew nothing about, besides a slight little call that I had, so here I am interviewing, thinking I'm so prideful. Well, it turns out I end up on this team that is beyond anything I could have asked or imagined, beyond anything I could have interviewed. That mentor, that person that I didn't even bother to like spend more than 5 minutes on the phone with, is deeply connected with every person at Arbonne, has deeply poured into me, is a better leader than I could ever ask myself. Like when I thought I was a good leader, she's blowing it out of the water. And then her mentor is the number one earner at Arbonne and is one of the most faith-filled, mission-minded, incredible businesswomen, and has been on calls multiple times with me. I didn't even know to ask for that when I'm quote interviewing people because I, know all the things. God just gave it to me. And so it was those like things along the way where God was just like, I'm putting you here. I'm putting you here. You don't even know what to ask for. I have a plan for you.
Oh my goodness. Wow. What a story of the way he works when we just let him, right?
Yes.
When we get out of the way and we let our flesh or like even like you said, being tired or feel fearful. It's like those are the things that I know the enemy can use to prevent us from something that's literally right there in front of you. But what's super cool is you still were able to be with your friend, like his timing of it all worked out. Like that is just so cool. And the other thing it reminded me, some of my friends, we were talking about Lauren Daigle and how special her music has been in this season. It's so funny how music can be such a healing thing. But there's a song in particular called I Remember that you may or may not know, but I'll link it. And anybody who's listening, you should go listen. You might cry, but it reminds me so much of your story and that heart. I honestly, I cannot imagine. I mean, I know because I went through something similar but different, but I cannot imagine how you felt like physically in that moment. But I love that the thing that kind of held like made you hold on to knowing that there could be something better, even if you couldn't see what it was remembering how faithful he's been to you in the past and through your journey in this business and in life. And just like holding on to that and then just taking, like you said, one step forward and trusting that by you doing that, I mean, it wasn't like you just sat back and waited, but it's also not like you just jumped, right? Like you didn't go for the right thing. So did you ever feel tempted to do that? Or were there other people that were like making quick decisions or, entire teams that were moving, things like that? Like what did that look like in that crazy week? I cannot even imagine.
Oh, yeah. Well, that first, when Greg announced, y'all should look at Arbonne, I did join that evening and I had quite a few people join with me. And I was so excited about that. The call the next day was okay. Everyone was in a really difficult place. I don't know if the tone was exactly right. The call we did with Arbonne and Beauty Counter, just everyone was in a crisis place. And Arbonne they've always made a choice to not offer bonuses or bridge payments, and other companies were. And so as the news kind of got out about Beauty Counter, some other people, began to partner with other things. And, it was really difficult. And it was hard for me to maybe second guess that voice I heard where he said, "This is for you," when another company is saying, "Hey, I'm going to give you, if you come over here and everybody I know is going over there now, I was like, that path would be easy and this bonus would be huge. There's things I can like about this company." And the people that have made those choices are in a really, I don't question the choice that they've made either, because it was a voice I heard that God said, "This is for you, Whitney Ray." It didn't mean it was for every other person that I've ever talked to or led or mentored. And I had to come to grips with that and say, this is a calling I have. And are you going to follow what I've told you to do, even if no one goes with you? Because, hey, that first 12 hours was pretty easy when everyone said they were going to do it. And now they're making different choices for reasons that can be really beneficial for them or whatever might be the state that they're in right now. Are you okay with that? Are you going to still follow me? Are you going to do what I ask you to do, even if it's not easy? And I think that's been the path I've been on, because not everyone I've worked with in Beauty Counter came over with me to Arbonne. And I had to really come to grips with like, why did I choose it? And maybe we can even go through some of that. Like, yes, I heard God's voice, but then I had to walk through some key things that made me know, could I offer this to someone else? Because I knew the only reason I had built a big business at Beauty Counter was not because I was hugely influential. It wasn't because I had a huge Instagram following. It was because I really saw myself take simple steps and other people could replicate it because of core things about the business. And if I didn't have that at a new place, I couldn't authentically tell someone else, you can come over here and be successful too and coach them because that wouldn't be true. And so I had to say, okay, you are open because God told you to. You've now checked off all your boxes of why this could be great for every person you talk to. Now, if you really believe that, you have no entitlement. Like, don't believe that you are expected to have success immediately. Go walk it out. Like, if anyone can be successful here, then you better go start showing other people that they can be successful too. And so just starting from ground zero and putting what I say into practice. And it's been hard on some days and then really good on others where I'm like, gosh, it actually is really good to be new and fresh at something. It's really good to be in the learner phase. It's really good to be in the rebuilding phase. And I get to maybe be really honest with myself where I've coasted a little bit in the past. And hey, it's time to, really figure out what 2024 world and your community and people need and go out there and deliver it and do a great job at it.
Oh my gosh, that's good. So there's so many things I want to talk about, but I love hearing the grace in your heart for others who made other decisions because I know that in particular, I think has been one of the hardest aspects of navigating this change is even from the founder to other leaders who are making different decisions or even other leaders making decisions that, you're like, no, but that's probably not the best place or whatever that looks like, that like you embody that grace that the Lord, first of all, has to know that, like you said, when you make your own mistakes, like you have, and you've gone out of alignment with what He has told you to do, He still brings you back. Like actually, Colleen was talking about, I think I mentioned this actually on the last episode, but she was saying that, it's like a path that she's on. And like when she wanders off the path, it's like the Lord, guides her back on the path. And so, who's to say that that mistake isn't or that it is a mistake for them. First of all, like you said, it could absolutely be the thing that's meant for them. And we need to have as many believers and as many strong leaders in every one of these companies, and any of them can be successful if they do that. So I just, first of all, I love your heart for grace and that. But also the sort of network marketing coach wants to know what these or I'm not really a coach, but anyway, I love to talk about systems and things. So what were steps that you were specifically looking for, the ones that had been successful for you to become a top seller in Beauty Counter, but then you were looking for them here. So what I would definitely love to talk. Give us all the steps.
Okay. Well, and maybe we'll start in the very first one because I've heard this a lot from people who I've worked beside who are now choosing not to do anything or maybe
Mhm.
just
Yes.
share links here and
Mhm.
there. There's a fear watching all the companies going straight affiliate, all the disruption happening. Is this even a viable business? Yeah. I mean, and I know you've been talking about it on your podcast. Like, is this even a viable business? And I think, was it Kristen Boss who shared maybe a couple weeks ago where she's like, yes, it is, and that almost every single business is going to have challenges. There's going to be change, and it's how do you navigate those and find the good. So when it came down to it, I really see such good things in this type of space. And the reason I think things are not always working out, it could be debt that's happening. It could be, financial choices. It could be bringing in, investment companies where maybe it should have been founder led, right? Like those are not in my control, but I can look for that. But I also wanted to find a company that was very field led. So back in my time with Noonday, it was so exciting. When I first joined, I was the ninth ambassador. It was us figuring it out together of what would work and building any sort of system that we had. Beauty Counter, I got in, maybe it was a 4 years in. So it had already been built, but they didn't have a training. They didn't have anyone who led the HQ training team. There wasn't anything official. And I saw the power of people out on the ground, meeting face to face. They knew what was working and what wasn't working faster than maybe a big, system would. And so I wanted to find a company for me. Number one was one that was really connected with the field and valued the field and had a lot of input from the field. And so that creates a pretty short list of companies that are out there. And so that really helps. And I would say that was step one, is one that would do that. The next one is I really was looking at the business structure. So we kind of, kind of said that who owns them? Where's the financing coming from? Or if they're a publicly traded company or they have stock, they should have audited financials available if they're publicly traded. If not, you can look into financial statements and you can look and see like, where are they? Are they financially healthy? That is not something I personally am good at looking at. So I brought in experts. I brought in my husband and I brought in a friend who works in the financial sector. And I asked them to look at it for me and then to describe it to me in words I could fully understand because that wasn't my strong suit, but I knew that was important. The next thing I really wanted to look at is the compensation plan. I think this one's really big. Compensation plans can change all the time. So has this company changed their compensation plan a lot in the past? Is it so new that they probably will change it soon? Like if it's so new, then maybe they could change it quickly. If it's been around for a long time, what kind of track record do they have there? And then can I understand it? Is it clear? Like, can I or almost anyone else look at it and figure out how to get paid? Because the more clear it is, the more replicatable and transparent it is. Looking at their income disclosure statements, if they have it, that's really good. One thing that maybe you don't even think about is some people just say, is it possible for me to make a lot at this company? But I'd say, look at what your goal income is and how many people at the company are at that level. I think that's a really important thing to look at. And if it's a really small number, you're going to want to figure out, well, why is it so small? Or is it a really big number? Okay, great. There's a lot of potential there. Then it starts to get in, I would say then the next big picture one is support and tech. If you sometimes I think people find themselves in these companies because a friend invited them in, it looked really fun. Maybe they just thought it would be a great thing. But when you're actually saying, I'm going to partner with this company, I know a lot of times you can burn out because you don't feel like you have the support you need or you don't have the tools to make it simple and easy. And then after that, it really gets into personality. For me, fair trade background with Beauty Counter or with Arbonne, and then Beauty Counter being a B corporation, that was a really big thing for me is everything transparent through the whole process? If they're using vanilla, is it a fair trade vanilla or was, slave labor involved in that? And things like that. Those are personal things that are meaningful to me, but to someone else, it may not be as important. And that's totally okay too. But that was an important piece for me. And then the company mission. What is the company? Do they have a mission? This is a really important one to ask. Do they have a mission that is integral to who they are? And if it is, are you on board with it? Do they have things that they support here and there on the side? And it should, it's just a small thing. That's one thing. But is there a core mission? What is it? And are you excited about being a part of it? You can love a product all day long, but if there's a core mission that doesn't feel a sense of alignment, it's not going to be something I think that can be there for the long time. But those were all the many steps that I went through. And it really helped me feel good as I knew I wanted to ask those questions. I knew I wanted to dig in. And as I got each one answered in an alignment for me, my excitement grew, my enthusiasm grew. And then all of a sudden it didn't matter. Did every person I know join with me? No. Like, gosh, look at how this is so aligned in a thing that I think will last for a very long time and could benefit people in all different kinds of ways and that they can do good, while helping their own, goals be reached. Like, okay, great. It's a no-brainer. I'm in. I'm excited.
Wow. I love those steps. So did you had those steps in place before you even went down the path with Arbonne, or was that the kind of steps that just kind of came to be? Like, maybe tell us more about that.
I think those are steps that live in the back of my mind all the time. And I took time to actually verbalize them, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. So I
Yes.
thought about it before I joined with Beauty Counter. Those were the same things I walked through before I joined with Beauty Counter. I went back and I would tell this story when I was back in Beauty Counter. A friend of mine had shared products with me, and I went back for 18 months. Like it was because I was at Noonday and I had another journey that I was on. But 18 months, I was watching and asking questions about the compensation plan, questions about the mission, questions about the business structure. Those are things that I think are just kind of inherent in me. But then when I really thought, I was like, no, these are the things I'm kind of checking off the list. And so when I went through the Arbonne things, I did have a list like on an actual piece of paper that I was asking.
That's awesome. Well, I took notes. So hopefully you guys are taking notes too, listening, because if you're still exploring companies and still kind of trying to figure out what's next, it's so wise because it can be like really easy, and I've seen this on both sides. It can be really easy to be influenced either by a someone else who's really excited about their path, whether that's been, chosen for them by the Lord or kind of by their own fleshly desires, whether that's money or something else. Or I see it a lot of times like people, for example, in Saint, we did not have a lot of support from the HQ side. And so the minute they even get like an inkling of what that looks like, they're like, yes, and take me. And it's like, okay, wait, that's just a facet of it. Okay. Like there's a whole of other things you kind of need to look into to make sure that it's the right fit. And not that once again, the Lord cannot work all things together, regardless of what company someone chooses. And also, there are a lot of companies, Arbonne being one of them, that check these boxes. And, so the cool thing is, and I'm sure some people are like, oh, I need to look at Arbonne again. And like another one I'll just say is like Melaleuca. Like these are companies that have navigated the shakeout. They have got like the kind of kinks worked out, if you will. And they're quietly doing this in a way that is working. It's working for the real everyday people. And so you just kind of have to do your due diligence, because I also know of a slew of other ones that are kind of on their way up that are like, I'll just list some of them, like Green Compass, for example, is one that I have some dear friends that have absolutely been led, in their faith journey to that company. And I know the founder's a believer. Another one is the Faster Way. I'm supposed to be doing the dang workouts, not as an affiliate or anything like that, but just workouts. I'm not doing them. But that founder, Amanda, I think is her name, dying to get her on this podcast because her story is so, so powerful. So, the cool part is whether it's Arbonne or any companies I may or may not have even heard of, especially the ones that have been around for decades, explore these and look for where the Lord like speaks to you, whether that's audibly or just like in those little details, or he starts to put the little pieces together, right? So, I know you shared a lot of it. And I know we could talk for like days about this, but is there any other advice or a piece of a story or anything that you want to share, Whitney, just for those that are listening that you think they might need to hear?
I heard it this morning. I was listening to this awesome call. Another thing I didn't know I needed from the Arbonne community is this group I'm a part of. They do a call the first Monday of every month, talking about their faith journey and what God has been doing. And it doesn't have anything to do with Arbonne. It just is that the group. And this woman was sharing this story, and she referenced that song, that praise and worship song, that even when we don't see it, he's working. And I have not stopped thinking about it since she said that. And she gave some examples of some work that they're doing with Haitian refugees in the Dominican Republic, and how so many of them are crying out, where's my next meal going to come from? And she's like, they don't even know that on the other side of the water, here we are, this small little group of people, we're raising money to send 11 million meals, over to them. And she's like, so that thought that whatever it is that you're needing, that you feel like you need so much, that even if you don't see it, he's working. And if anyone could listen to this, it wouldn't be, oh, join Arbonne or join this company or join that. It would be that you, I'm sure, have a faith and you're wanting God to show you your next step, that even when you don't see it, he's working to, really open yourself up to say, if you tell me to do something, even if it seems strange, will you take those steps and then support it like I did? I mean, I'm a thoughtful, detailed person. I didn't follow it up with business thoughts in mind. And then I will just say too, the replication that I felt like was possible. Those are the strong business things that makes me feel like the business will be there. That makes me feel like it's there. But it also had a few products that I felt like were fun and easy and help people feel alive. The core thing I'm feeling right now is something I heard from Brendan Burchard. But if you've done any growth day stuff, I'm just love him so much. And he's like, the core thing that every human wants after food and housing is taken care of is to feel alive. And so when we're thinking about our next things that we want to do, we want to feel alive in the work that we do. We want the recognition, we want success. Maybe those are things I thought of because, gosh, I had those things in Beauty Counter, and I had the income and I had the success. But if I get that by going through a side door or a back door, or something that doesn't align with who I really am, I will not feel alive. I can have all of those things and skip out on the aliveness. But if I lean in to who God wants me to be and doing the things that he wants me to do, I will feel alive. And the success and all of that will just be icing on the cake. So if you've been in a place where if anyone here is listening has been in a place where you've had the success, you've had the recognition, don't miss out that the aliveness you feel when those things come in is really when it's in alignment with who God has you to be and where he wants you to be.
Oh man, that's such good advice. And I want to watch my favorite movie now, The Greatest Showman.
Yes.
My kids are going to watch because I'm like picturing Come Alive as you say it. I love that movie so
Oh,
much.
and if you haven't seen the behind the scenes when they sing that song, have you seen that on
No,
YouTube?
I don't think
Oh,
so.
it's gonna change your life. They shared it at a beauty counter conference, and I have not stopped. It's what I pull out when I need to. It's the first time they kinda did it in a sound stage, and it is one of the most moving songs, how she goes from kind of timid, and then she gets out from behind and just starts singing with her whole heart. So, definitely worth a watch.
Oh my goodness. Well, and it's wild too, because our church, talking about Waymaker, that song that even when you don't see it, he's working. The first time I saw that movie was actually at our church. We do called a series called At the Movies, and they broke it down and kind of the biblical principles. And so seeing it through that lens, even though it's obviously a secular movie, it's there if you look for it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's my favorite movie. But we just wrapped up the series of At the Movies this summer, and we had it 75 baptisms just yesterday morning alone, and they played that song that the even when you don't can't see it, he's working. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like none of us, my husband and I were like, how is it that people are just they're coming to the movies at church and then they're giving their life to Christ after watching a movie? Like, what is happening? Like, how is the Lord using using all of this? And so
He uses all kinds of ways to do his work.
N well, one more thing I wanna ask you because it's kinda tying it full circle is you're in this gorgeous space. That was the first thing I noticed when you hopped on, and I know that that had to be one of the most heartbreaking and hard things that that you went through was you signed this lease on this beautiful space with this vision to build your beauty counter business. Tell us now, because you shared a little bit with me, what's next for you in this beautiful location that you can see if you're watching on YouTube.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I just decided this last week what I would do. So, I mean, the news came. I had done a grand opening and had my beauty counter products here, thinking I could place orders when they came back, and that didn't pan out. And so, honestly, the space was just in the background. My husband and kids built me these beautiful walls, and I'm in the downtown square at my small town, and I just kept thinking, I need to know what to do with this space. And he kept telling me to wait. And I was like, how can you tell me to wait? I just saw the money going out the door every month as I paid the rent. And while I felt an immediate take a next step with Arbonne, I wasn't quite ready yet to think, what could this space be? Because it was so different. And I just feel like I got a really clear vision in the last few weeks. And so I have purchased some fair trade robes and eye masks and different kind of beauty products to go alongside Arbonne. So I'll have Arbonne set up in part of it, but I'm also going to bring in some other things I'm going to sell retail and kind of call it my healthy living club. And I was really excited because even just talking to you, just remembering my story and how my first steps were moving forward with Noonday and my passion for fair trade and helping others. And now it's moving forward beyond beauty and into how can we have inner wellness and really looking out for all parts of our body. And now I get to do it all together in one space. So I'll be opening up in just the next few weeks and have my space reopened in its new imagined way.
Oh my gosh, I wish I lived closer. We're like several states apart, Texas and Georgia. But oh man, I'm so excited for you, Whitney. And I know that just hearing whether they're listening or seeing you live, like hearing the joy and the peace in your voice and just in your countenance after I know 3 months ago, you probably never thought you could feel that way again. So just let that be balm to your soul if you're still struggling with whatever you might be going through. Like you said, it might not, this cool thing about a podcast. I remember when I interviewed Bob Heilig, he told me this for the first time. He was like, podcasts live on. He's like, this thing will have legs. And so, somebody could be listening to this years down the road and still be just as inspired by your story, Whitney, because we are not promised as believers that things will be easy in this life. In fact, we are promised that they will be hard, but we are also promised that He will be with us in the hard, especially if we just look for Him. And the fact that, like, He's already in just a few short months after I know what had to be one of the most devastating, probably the most devastating business thing that's happened, He has got you in a place of joy and peace. And I know that above all, that's what people are looking for. So thank you so much for sharing your story and your brilliant wisdom. So go back and listen and take notes if you weren't. And thank you again, Whitney.
Thanks so much.
Oh, you know what? I have an idea. So I just started, this is like I guess when all the saint stuff happened, I started praying at the end. And this is an epiphany. I didn't ask you this, but could I have you say a prayer over the listeners as we close up?
Oh, I would love to.
Okay, great.
God, thank you so much for every person who's listening right now. Lord, I pray that wherever they are in life, whether they're in a place where their business is on pause or there's an unknown, or whether there's an unknown in their life or relationship or something very, very meaningful to them, Lord, I pray that they would know that even if they can't see it, you're working, and that they would stop and look in your word, that they would spend time in quiet with you. And maybe they'll hear a voice audibly, maybe a verse will step out from scripture, or maybe a text will come through from a friend that gives them just exactly the right next step. And that you would guide each and every person who's listening into their next step. Maybe it's just for the next 5 minutes or the next day, that you would just be with them, that they would know that you were with them, and that they would believe and trust that you have nothing but success for them. You promise that you will work all things together for our good. And so I know that every person who just relies on you will see you come through in beautiful and creative and probably completely unknown and surprising ways. And we just love you and trust you and thank you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Oh man, that was good, Whitney. Thank you guys for listening. And I hope you all have a beautiful week. Bye.